The highway stretched like a ribbon of faded silver beneath the glow of the midnight sky, empty except for the occasional pair of headlights that flickered by and disappeared into the distance. Keanu Reeves drove in silence, his old black motorcycle humming steadily beneath him, the cold wind pressing against his jacket and brushing through his long hair. It had been a long day of shooting in the city, hours of cameras, interviews, and flashes that burned through his mind like brief explosions of light. But now all of that was behind him. Out here, alone on the open road, there was peace. The moon hung low and bright, the kind of moon that casts soft shadows and makes even broken asphalt look gentle. Keanu narrowed his eyes as a dim fluorescent glow appeared ahead. A single gas station on the edge of nowhere, its sign flickering uncertainly like it was gasping for breath. He pulled in slowly, the gravel crunching under his tires. The sound seemed to echo in the still night air, and for a moment, it felt like he had arrived in another world, a place no one else would ever see. The gas station was old, its walls faded and stained by years of weather, its windows clouded with dust. A single pump stood there, illuminated by a flickering overhead light. Keanu cut the engine and took off his helmet, running a hand through his slightly tangled hair, his eyes scanning the quiet surroundings. There was no one else around, only the faint hum of insects in the distance and the occasional creak of the building settling into itself. Inside the small convenience store, a woman stood behind the counter. She looked tired, her shoulders curved inward as if carrying a weight too heavy for her frame. Her uniform was clean but worn, her name tag crooked, and strands of hair escaped from the bun she had hastily tied. Her eyes, though, held something deeper, a shadow of grief that seemed to sit quietly within her. Keanu noticed it immediately, though he did not show it. He had seen eyes like that before, on film sets and on streets, in places where people tried to hide their pain with polite smiles. He stepped inside, the bell above the door giving a soft ring that felt too cheerful for the stillness of the night. The woman looked up, startled at first, then quickly composed herself. "Evening," she said softly, her voice hoarse like she had been speaking very little lately. Keanu gave her a gentle smile, nodding once. "Evening," he replied, his voice low and calm. He walked slowly through the aisles, not really looking for anything in particular. He had enough gas in the tank to get to the next town, and he was not really hungry. But something about this small place, this quiet figure behind the counter, made him want to linger a little longer. He picked up a bottle of water, then a small pack of crackers, letting his eyes drift over the shelves lined with faded labels and forgotten snacks. As he approached the counter, he noticed a small photo frame tucked beside the register. It held a picture of a young man, perhaps in his 20s, smiling wide with bright eyes and wearing a baseball cap. The frame itself was chipped, like it had been handled many times, and there was a small flower pressed into the corner. Keanu placed the items on the counter, but his gaze lingered on the photograph. The woman followed his eyes and hesitated. For a moment, the store felt even quieter, as if the night itself was holding its breath. "That's my son," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu looked up, his expression soft, not pushing her to say more. She drew in a shaky breath. He passed away last year. Car accident. He used to help me here sometimes." Her hands moved automatically, scanning the items, but her eyes did not leave the photo. There was a silence between them that was heavy yet gentle, a silence filled with unspoken pain and understanding. Keanu felt the weight of her words settle into him like stones dropped into still water, rippling outward through memories of his own losses, his own quiet griefs he rarely spoke about. "I'm sorry," he said softly, and the words felt honest, not empty or rehearsed. The woman gave a small nod, her lips pressing together as if she wanted to say something but could not find the strength. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out some bills, laying them on the counter, but she pushed them back slightly. "That's too much," she said, shaking her head. He smiled faintly. "It's all right," he murmured, but she insisted, sliding the change back across the counter with trembling fingers. He noticed then that her hands were calloused, The skin cracked from long hours and hard work. There was a faint ring mark on her finger where a wedding band might have once been. As he took the change, he did something unusual for him. He stayed. Instead of walking back to his bike, he leaned lightly against the counter and asked, "How long have you been working nights like this?" She blinked, surprised by the question, then let out a weary sigh. "Since he passed, cannot sleep much anymore, so I take the night shifts. It's quiet, too quiet sometimes." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she quickly looked down, pretending to rearrange something under the counter. Keanu felt a pang in his chest. Fame, success, and all the noise of Hollywood felt a million miles away in that moment. Here was someone who had loved deeply, lost deeply, and carried on in silence. They spoke a little longer, quietly, as if afraid to disturb the night. She told him about the little league games her son used to play, how he loved old cars, how he wanted to travel but never got the chance. Keanu listened, truly listened, his dark eyes steady on hers, offering something many people forget to give: attention without judgment, presence without hurry. When she paused, he simply nodded, letting her know he heard every word. In that small gas station, surrounded by shelves of dusty candy bars and humming refrigerators, there was a moment of humanity that felt sacred. Finally, he straightened, glancing toward the door. "Thank you," he said softly, and she looked up, startled. "For what?" she asked, confused. He smiled, a quiet, almost shy smile. "For sharing him with me," he replied, nodding toward the photograph. Her lips trembled, and she looked down quickly, brushing a hand across her eyes. "Drive safe," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Keanu gave a gentle nod and turned to leave, the bell above the door ringing again as he stepped out into the cool night air. Outside, he paused by his motorcycle, the night breeze carrying the faint scent of gasoline and wildflowers. He looked back through the window and saw her standing there, holding the photo frame in both hands, her shoulders shaking as silent tears fell. Keanu's jaw tightened as memories of his own loved ones flickered through his mind. He took a deep breath, feeling the night settle around him like a heavy blanket. Slowly, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded envelope, something he had carried with him for weeks, unsure where it would go. He looked at it for a long moment, then turned back toward the gas station door. The bell chimed again as he stepped inside. The woman looked up, startled, quickly wiping her eyes. "You forgot something," she asked. Keanu shook his head, placing the envelope gently on the counter. "For you," he said simply. She frowned, confused, her hand hovering over the envelope. "What is it?" she asked, but Keanu was already stepping back, his expression unreadable yet warm. "Just something to help," he murmured, then turned and walked out before she could ask anything more. As his motorcycle roared to life and disappeared into the night, the woman stared at the envelope, her heart pounding. She reached out with trembling hands, sliding a finger under the flap. Inside were several crisp bills, far more than he owed for the water and crackers, and a small note in neat handwriting. "For the memories you keep alive, for the nights you endure. Thank you for reminding me what matters." Tears blurred her vision as she pressed the note to her chest, the sound of the motorcycle fading into the distance like a whispered prayer carried away by the wind. The night after his visit to the gas station, Keanu rode for hours with no clear destination. The envelope he had left behind still echoed in his mind, not because of the money, but because of the look in the woman's eyes, the kind of grief that does not announce itself loudly but lives in the quiet corners of a person's soul. He felt the wind biting at his face as he rode past sleeping towns and silent fields, each mile carrying him deeper into his own thoughts. He had met countless people over the years, in hotels and airports and backstage green rooms, but very few ever stayed with him like this. Her trembling hands, the photograph with a chipped frame, the small smile she tried to hold when speaking of her son, it all lingered, haunting and gentle at the same time. By dawn, Keanu found himself parked on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The waves rolled in, white against the gray-blue water, crashing softly against the rocks below. He killed the engine and sat there, helmet in his lap, watching as the first streaks of sunlight painted the horizon. His mind wandered back through time, through memories he kept locked away most days. The moments when he had lost his own child before birth, the quiet ache of a life that could have been. He rarely spoke about it, never in interviews, but the feeling never really left him. Seeing that woman's grief, feeling the unspoken love she still carried, stirred something deep and tender inside him. Later that week, after finishing a day of press obligations in the city, Keanu found himself drawn back to that lonely stretch of highway. He did not tell anyone where he was going. No assistants, no cameras, no schedule. Just him and the road. When he reached the gas station again, it was early evening. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a wash of pink and gold in the sky. The station's lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. He noticed right away that the same woman was there, restocking shelves with quiet focus. This time, she looked up with surprise when she saw him walk through the door. "You came back," she said, her voice soft, almost uncertain. Keanu gave a small smile. "I was passing through," he replied, though they both seemed to know it was not entirely true. He wandered the aisles again, not because he needed anything, but because he wanted to give her time to compose herself. When he returned to the counter, he noticed the same photograph still resting beside the register, but this time there was a small candle burning next to it, its flame steady and warm. He nodded toward it. "Beautiful candle," he murmured. She glanced at it, then back at him. "It was his favorite scent," she said. "Vanilla." He used to light them in his room while he studied. Keanu listened as she spoke, this time a little more openly. She told him about her son's plans, how he had saved up to travel, how he wanted to study engineering, how he talked endlessly about fixing old cars. Her voice cracked occasionally, but she pushed through, almost as if she had been waiting for someone to listen. Keanu leaned on the counter, resting his arms casually as if they had all the time in the world. He asked questions, not intrusive ones, but gentle, patient ones that showed he was truly present. She told him her name was Marie, and as she spoke, he could see her come alive for brief moments, her eyes brightening as memories spilled out. When there was a pause, Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out a small object. It was a keychain, worn and simple, shaped like an old motorcycle. He turned it over in his hand before placing it on the counter. "I used to carry this when I was starting out," he said quietly. "A friend gave it to me, said it was for good luck on the road." Marie looked at it, her eyes softening. "It's beautiful," she whispered. He nodded. "I think maybe your son would like to have it." Her breath caught, and for a moment she could not speak. Slowly she reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. She held it carefully, as if it might break. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. They stood in silence for a while, the hum of the refrigerators filling the air. Outside, the night deepened, and the faint sound of crickets began to rise. Keanu finally spoke, his tone thoughtful. "You know, sometimes the people we love find ways to stay with us, in small things, scent, sound, a memory." Marie nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes again. "Sometimes it feels like he's still here," she admitted. "When the wind comes through the door, I swear I hear his laugh." Keanu smiled gently. "Maybe you do," he said. "Maybe that's his way of saying he's proud of you." A customer came in then, breaking the stillness. A man in a trucker cap buying cigarettes and coffee. Marie wiped her eyes quickly, greeting him with practiced politeness. Keanu stepped back, letting her handle the transaction, but he watched the way she straightened her shoulders, the way she tucked the keychain into her pocket like a secret she wanted to hold close. When the customer left, Marie looked at Keanu again, this time with a small smile that was real, not forced. "You didn't have to come back," she said. He shrugged lightly, that familiar modesty in his movements. "Maybe I needed to," he replied. As he turned to leave, Marie called out softly, "Wait." He paused at the door, looking back. She reached under the counter and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. I wrote something down, she said hesitantly. It's silly, but it's something my son always said when things felt too heavy. She held it out to him with shaking hands. Keanu stepped forward and took it gently. The paper was worn, the ink slightly smudged, but the words were clear. Be kind, even when it hurts. He stared at the words for a long moment, feeling them settle deep inside him like a quiet echo. He folded the paper carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. Thank you, he said softly, and Marie smiled through her tears. No, she whispered, thank you. Outside, the night air was cool and still, the stars beginning to emerge one by one. Keanu stood by his motorcycle, holding the folded paper in his hand. He looked up at the sky, letting out a long breath. In that moment, the world felt vast and intimate all at once, as if every soul carrying quiet grief was somehow connected by invisible threads. He tucked the paper safely into his jacket, started his bike, and rode away slowly, the hum of the engine blending with the sounds of the night. Back inside the gas station, Marie stood alone behind the counter, the little candle still flickering beside her son's photograph. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the small motorcycle keychain. She held it tightly, closing her eyes, and for the first time in many months, she felt something warm stir in her chest, a reminder that kindness could reach across miles, across pain, and bring light into the darkest of nights. Days passed, then weeks. The envelope and the note Keanu left behind became something Marie carried in her heart like a small lantern. On nights when the gas station felt too empty, she would read the words again, whispering them under her breath while the hum of the refrigerators filled the silence. For the memories you keep alive, for the nights you endure, thank you for reminding me what matters. One evening, as autumn winds began to sweep dry leaves across the parking lot, Marie sat on a wooden stool behind the counter. The candle burned low beside her son's picture. She was writing in a small notebook, a habit she had taken up after meeting Keanu. Each night she wrote something about her son, a memory, a story, even a joke he once told. It felt like stitching pieces of him back into the fabric of her days. The bell over the door rang. She looked up quickly, expecting another late-night traveler or a tired trucker. Instead, a young man stepped in, barely out of his 20s, thin frame, nervous eyes darting around as though unsure he should be there. He held a crumpled envelope in his hand. His jacket was too big for him, and his shoes were scuffed from walking. Marie's first instinct was concern. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. The young man hesitated, glancing at the shelves, then back at her. Are you Marie?" His voice shook, not from fear, but from something heavier. She nodded slowly. "Yes, do I know you?" He swallowed hard, stepping forward and placing the crumpled envelope on the counter. "I don't think so," he said, "but I think you know the man who gave me this." Marie's brows furrowed as she reached for the envelope. It was weathered, edges soft from handling, and her heart skipped when she saw the familiar handwriting on the front. For someone who needs a reason to keep going. She looked up sharply. "Where did you get this?" she asked. The young man lowered his eyes. "A few days ago, I was sitting outside a shelter downtown. I didn't have anywhere to go. I was thinking about giving up." His voice trembled. "And then this guy, tall, long hair, quiet, he sat down next to me. He didn't ask for anything. He just listened. And then he put this envelope in my hand and said, 'Help someone else. Maybe it'll help you too.'" Marie felt her breath catch. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a small amount of money. Not much, but enough for food or a night's stay somewhere. But tucked with the bills was a folded piece of paper. Her own handwriting staring back at her. "Be kind, even when it hurts." Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes filling with tears. He gave this to you," she whispered. The young man nodded. "He said it came from someone strong, someone who keeps going no matter what." He paused, swallowing hard. "I don't know why, but it kept me from doing something stupid that night." I thought you should know. Marie set the envelope down carefully, her hands trembling. The candlelight flickered over her son's photograph, and in that moment, she felt something shift inside her, like the quiet click of a lock opening. She had believed her grief was a closed circle, something that began and ended with her and her son. But here was proof that kindness, once released, did not stop, traveled, multiplied. It found its way into other broken hearts. She reached across the counter and placed her hand gently over the young man's. "What's your name?" she asked. "Eli," he said softly. "Eli," she repeated, as if tasting the sound. "Sit for a while, would you? I make a mean cup of coffee." He hesitated, then nodded, moving to a small booth near the window. Marie poured 2 cups, her hands steadying as she worked. She joined him, setting the cup in front of him. For a few moments they sat in silence, sipping slowly, the night stretching wide and quiet around them. Then Eli spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I lost my mom when I was 12. My dad left after that. I've been drifting, I guess." Marie listened, really listened, just as Keanu had listened to her. She nodded gently, offering no judgment. When Eli faltered, she spoke softly, telling him about her son, the way he would bring her little gifts, the time he fixed her old radio, the way he loved vanilla candles. Eli smiled faintly, and for the first time in a long time, his eyes softened. Hours passed unnoticed. By the time Eli left, he carried with him not only the envelope but also a folded note Marie had written on a fresh piece of paper. "Keep walking. The world still needs you." She watched from the doorway as he disappeared into the night, his shoulders straighter than when he had arrived. When she returned inside, the station felt different. The air seemed lighter, the silence less oppressive. She glanced at the photograph, the candle still burning beside it. "You're still helping people, aren't you?" She whispered to the picture. A tear slid down her cheek, but this time it was warm, not heavy. Miles away, Keanu sat in a quiet cafe long after closing time, hood pulled low over his face, sipping lukewarm coffee. The waitress didn't recognize him, and he liked it that way. In his jacket pocket was a new envelope, ready for whoever might need it next. He thought of Marie, of the note she had given him, of the keychain he had left behind. He thought of how grief could weave unexpected bridges between strangers. He smiled faintly, staring out at the empty street. He did not need cameras or headlines or grand gestures. He only needed moments like these, small ripples of kindness sent out quietly into the world, trusting they would reach whoever was meant to receive them. Somewhere on a lonely highway, a candle burned beside a photograph, and somewhere in a dark city, a young man walked with new purpose, and between them, unseen but deeply felt, moved the kindness of a man who asked for nothing in return. The first storm of the season rolled in on a Thursday night. It began as a gentle drizzle, the kind that taps softly on the roof like an old lullaby. But within hours the wind howled across the flat stretch of highway and rain lashed against the gas station windows in wild sheets. Marie stood behind the counter, arms wrapped around herself for warmth. The building groaned under each sudden gust, and outside, the neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting frantic shadows across the empty parking lot. Few travelers came on nights like this. Most stayed home or huddled in motels until the worst had passed. But storms had never scared Marie. In some ways, she found comfort in them. The sound of rain reminded her of the nights she used to stay up late with her son, sipping tea and listening to the weather rumble through the hills. She lit the vanilla candle beside his photograph and let the scent fill the small room. Her eyes moved to the door, a quiet habit she had developed over the past weeks. Each time it opened, she half expected him. Tall, soft-spoken, long hair falling around his face. Keanu. She told herself it was silly, but still she hoped. The bell above the door finally rang near midnight. Marie looked up, startled, as a figure pushed inside, shaking off the wet from his jacket. It was not Keanu. It was a young woman, probably in her early 30s, hair plastered to her forehead by rain, clothes soaked through. She clutched a small plastic bag to her chest like something precious. Her eyes darted around, frantic, as if searching for safety. Marie stepped forward immediately. "Oh, honey, you're drenched. Come here, let me get you a towel." The woman hesitated, then nodded quickly, water dripping from her sleeves onto the tile floor. Marie hurried to the back room and returned with an old towel, wrapping it around the stranger's shoulders. "Sit down," she urged, gesturing toward the small booth near the window. "You're safe here. There's no one else around." As the woman sat, Marie noticed her trembling hands. The plastic bag she clutched bore the faded logo of a hospital. Marie's heart clenched. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. The woman nodded too quickly, her lips pressing together, but tears welled in her eyes. She looked down at the bag, then back at Marie. I couldn't stay," she whispered, voice breaking. Marie sat across from her, leaning forward gently. "You don't have to explain if you don't want to." The woman shook her head, gripping the bag tighter. They said I had to sign papers I didn't understand. They said my brother was gone, that I should just leave him there. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave without something." Her hand opened the bag slightly, revealing a folded denim jacket, frayed at the cuffs, with a name patch sewn onto the front. Marie's throat tightened. "Your brother?" she asked softly. The woman nodded, tears spilling over now. "He was all I had," she choked out. "And now I don't even know how to go home." The storm raged outside, wind shrieking against the glass, but inside the booth it felt as though the world had narrowed to this moment. Two women bound by grief they could not fully put into words. Marie reached across the table, placing her hand gently over the woman's. Her voice was calm, steady, like a warm lantern in a dark room. "You don't have to go home yet. You can stay here as long as you need." For a long time they sat there, the woman. Her name was Lena, she eventually said, telling fragments of her story between sobs. Marie listened the way someone listens when they have been there themselves, when they know that pain cannot be rushed or fixed, only carried. And as Lena spoke, Marie found herself sharing pieces of her own story too. She told Lena about her son, about the nights she still woke up expecting to hear his footsteps, about the stranger who had come through her door and reminded her that kindness still mattered. Lena listened, tears drying slowly as the candle flickered between them. Hours passed. The storm showed no sign of easing, but inside the gas station a fragile peace settled over them. Marie made 2 cups of coffee, placing one in front of Lena. The younger woman wrapped both hands around the warm mug and let out a shaky breath. "You don't even know me," Lena murmured. "And yet, you're sitting here." Marie smiled softly. "Someone once sat here for me," she replied. "Now it's my turn." A sudden flash of headlights cut through the rain outside. Marie glanced up, surprised. Few people braved the storm. The sound of an engine died. Then the door opened. Keanu stepped inside. His hair damp from the rain, jacket speckled with droplets. He pushed the door closed behind him and looked up, meeting Marie's eyes. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Relief and surprise bloomed across her face. "You're back," she said, her voice catching. He gave that small, quiet smile of his and nodded. "I had a feeling you might need some company." His eyes shifted to Lena, taking in her red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. He did not ask questions. He simply stepped forward, pulling off his gloves, and offered a soft greeting. Lena blinked, startled, recognizing him. You're Keanu Reeves," she whispered, almost disbelieving. He crouched slightly so their eyes met, his voice calm and gentle. "Right now, I'm just someone who wants to sit with you." The 3 of them stayed there as the storm held on. They shared stories, small ones, human ones. Lena talked about her brother's laugh, about the way he always wore that denim jacket even in summer. Marie spoke of the candle and her son's baseball games. And Keanu listened, occasionally sharing a memory of his own, a friend long gone, a moment on set that reminded him life is fragile. At one point, Lena's tears came again, sudden and fierce. Without hesitation, Keanu slid into the booth beside her, placing an arm lightly around her shoulders. He did not offer hollow words. He simply stayed, present, quiet, letting her cry. Marie watched them, her heart swelling with a strange mixture of sorrow and gratitude. The storm outside became a distant hum, almost like ocean waves, and in that booth under flickering lights, something sacred unfolded. A circle of strangers bound by shared pain and unexpected kindness. Hours later, the rain began to soften. Lena fell asleep with her head resting on her brother's jacket, her breathing slow and even. Marie fetched a blanket from the back room, draping it gently over her. Keanu rose quietly, helping Marie clear the empty mugs. He glanced toward Lena, then back at Marie. His eyes filled with a deep, unspoken understanding. "You've made this place more than a gas station," he said softly. "You've made it a refuge." Marie felt tears prick her eyes, but she smiled. "I had help," she whispered. He returned her smile, the kind that carries a world of meaning without a single word more. Outside, the clouds began to break, and the first hints of dawn touched the wet asphalt with silver light. Keanu slipped his gloves back on, preparing to leave, but before he did, he reached into his jacket and placed another folded envelope on the counter. Marie shook her head, emotion tightening her chest. "You don't have to," she began, but he stopped her with a gentle look. "This isn't about what anyone has to do," he said softly. "It's about what we can do." She took the envelope, feeling its weight in her hands. "You always seem to show up when the night feels too heavy," she whispered. He gave a small shrug, stepping toward the door. "Maybe that's because you taught me how." The bell chimed as he stepped back into the dawn. Marie watched him walk to his bike, watched the engine flare to life, watched as he rode off into the soft morning light. She turned back toward Lena, still sleeping peacefully in the booth, and felt something bloom quietly within her. Something bright, something steady. The storm had passed, but its memory would remain. And in the heart of a lonely gas station, the candle still burned, a fragile but unwavering light. The morning sun rose slow and gentle, turning the wet asphalt outside into a shimmering river of gold. The storm had left behind a hush, as if the world itself was pausing to breathe. Marie stood at the gas station window, fingers curled lightly around a steaming mug of coffee, watching the sky lighten with each passing minute. Inside the booth, Lena still slept, wrapped in the blanket Marie had given her, her head resting on her brother's denim jacket. For the first time in weeks, Marie felt something close to peace settle over her chest. She thought of Keanu as she sipped her coffee, the way he had simply sat there without trying to fix anything, without trying to be anyone but himself. She thought of his quiet words, "It's about what we can do," and she thought of the envelope he had left behind, still resting in her apron pocket, its corners pressing softly against her hip like a reminder she could not ignore. Marie spent the early morning tending to small tasks, refilling the coffee machine, wiping down the counters, straightening shelves. The candle beside her son's photograph had burned low during the night, leaving a puddle of wax and a faint scent of vanilla that mingled with the rich aroma of fresh coffee. She replaced it with a new candle, lighting the wick and watching the small flame dance, steady and warm. She found herself whispering to the photograph without even realizing it. "You would have liked him," she said softly, her lips curling into a sad, tender smile. "You would have liked what we did last night." Lena stirred in the booth, blinking against the morning light. She sat up slowly, clutching the denim jacket close, confusion clouding her face for a moment before memory returned. I fell asleep," she murmured, embarrassed. Marie walked over, setting down a fresh cup of coffee. "You needed it," she said gently. Lena wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into her fingers. Her eyes were red but calmer now, and there was a different kind of weight in her shoulders, still heavy but no longer crushing. "Thank you," Lena whispered after a long silence, "for everything, for listening, for not sending me away." Marie sat across from her, meeting her eyes. "You don't need to thank me," she said softly. "You're not alone, even if it feels that way." Lena nodded slowly, tears welling up again, but this time they did not spill over. She took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and set the cup down carefully. "I think I can go home now," she said. "It won't be easy, but I think I can try." Marie reached across the table, resting her hand gently on Lena's. "Keep walking," she said, repeating the words she had once written for Eli. "The world still needs you." Lena's lips trembled into a small smile, and she whispered the words back, as if trying them out for herself. "The world still needs me." By mid-morning, Lena gathered her few belongings, folding the denim jacket carefully and tucking it back into the plastic bag. Before she left, she turned to Marie and said, "I won't forget this place." Her voice caught, "Or you." Marie gave her a warm smile, her own eyes shimmering. "That's enough," she replied softly. The bell chimed as Lena stepped into the sunlight, and Marie watched her walk across the parking lot, each step steady, deliberate, until she disappeared down the road. The station felt quiet again, but not empty. Marie turned back toward the counter and pulled the envelope from her apron. She opened it slowly, finding not only bills but also a folded piece of paper. Her heart quickened as she unfolded it, revealing Keanu's neat handwriting. "You reminded me that even in silence, kindness speaks loudest. Keep your door open. Someone will always need the light you keep burning." Marie pressed the note to her chest, closing her eyes as a fresh wave of emotion washed over her. In that moment, she felt connected, not just to Keanu, not just to Lena, but to every soul who had ever passed through her door, each carrying their own invisible storms. She thought of Eli and wondered where he was now. She thought of her son and imagined him smiling, proud of the way she had turned her grief into something larger than herself. That evening, as the sun began to set, Marie stood outside the gas station, leaning against the doorframe and watching the horizon fade into shades of orange and violet. The wind carried the faint scent of wet earth and wildflowers, and she closed her eyes, letting it fill her lungs. She thought of how many people passed by on this road each day, each with their own quiet battles, their own hidden heartbreaks. How many would need a place to rest, a kind word, a candle burning in the dark? Marie made a decision then. She would keep the gas station as it was, but she would add something new. In the corner near the booth, she would place a small wooden box with paper and pens, inviting anyone who stopped to leave a note, a memory, a thought they wanted the world to know. She would call it the lantern box, and each night before closing, she would read the notes aloud, letting their words fill the space, reminding herself and anyone who listened that they were not alone. As the last light faded, Marie stepped inside and lit the candle by her son's photograph. The flame flickered, bright against the growing darkness, and she smiled softly. Somewhere far away, Keanu was riding through another quiet stretch of road, another envelope tucked into his jacket, ready for the next soul who might need it. She imagined him pausing somewhere, looking up at the same sky, feeling the same gentle ache in his heart. And though they were miles apart, she felt his kindness like a thread tying them together. Marie sat down at the booth, pulling her notebook closer. She opened to a blank page and began to write. Tonight, Lena left with her brother's jacket and a little more hope. A stranger reminded me again why we keep going. Kindness is the bridge we build when words are not enough. She closed the notebook, placing her hand over the cover for a moment, then set it aside. The hum of the refrigerators filled the room, steady and calm. Outside, the night deepened, but the little gas station glowed softly against the darkness. The candle burned on, unwavering, and inside, Marie sat quietly, her grief no longer a weight that drowned her but a river that carried her toward others, toward every person who might need to step through her door and find, even for a moment, that they were not alone.